everybody. Back for another episode of Simple Astrology and almost completed the zodiac signs. We have reached today Aquarius, number 11. And yeah, it's interesting because actually right now we're still in Pisces. We're in Pisces. As I record this, we're in Pisces season, and I'm definitely feeling the Pisces energy, which is making me a little more spaced out than normal. So we'll see if I can hold it together here for Aquarius. But I do want to keep moving on these. And whenever I start one of these new episodes, whatever these will be, my sharing of astrology, sharing of my love of astrology, I want to invite you to, if astrology is your thing, if you're just learning astrology, wherever you're at with astrology, to make it an experience. And one of the ways I do that is with working with planets. It's called planets on the first, or choosing planets first. And really all that means is picking a particular planet that you want to look through that planet, pick that part in you that's represented by that planet, and to see life through that window or through that filter. And so for me this year, every year on my birthday, I think this is the 6th year I've been doing this now. On my birthday, I choose a new planet, a new part of myself to be on the front line, or to lead the pack, or to be the first responder, the first reactor to things. And it's helped me learn a lot about astrology in general, and also just how those energies work and show up within me. So yeah, this is just my invitation to make it more than reading a book or listening to someone talk about astrology. Make it an experience for yourself. I sometimes call it my series, We Are the Planets, is about making astrology a living meditation, that we're actually awakening to ourselves through that different language of energy. But it happens through us living, not stepping aside from living to learn about living, if that makes sense. And of course, I like all of it, because certainly I'm into books and watching and learning all the time, but this part has enriched my experience. So, all right, that being said, if you want to know more, you can pop onto my website at tarotall.com or reach out to me. So we made to Aquarius, and Aquarius is a fixed sign. It's yang energy, and it's air, and it follows Capricorn. And so essentially, there are four quadrants in the wheel. And so the first sign, Aries, and then Taurus and Gemini are the first quadrant. And then Cancer, Leo, and Virgo, the second. And then Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, the third. So we, with Aquarius, are in the fourth quadrant. And so I want to back up just briefly to Capricorn, because Capricorn is the cardinal sign that initiates us into that fourth quadrant. And the fourth quadrant, which is made up of the three signs, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces, is about objective awareness of self. I think of it this way sometimes, that with Sagittarius, we reach the top of the mountain, or we reach the top of the chart. We reach the pinnacle, really, of how far we can go and how much we can do with our identity. All the fire signs have to do with identity in some respects. And so in some ways with Sagittarius, we hit that pinnacle. And it's from that pinnacle that Capricorn takes over, and then brings all that wisdom from experience that's come from everything, actually, from Aries all the way through Sagittarius, and now takes that back down the mountain so that we can apply it and work with it. So this idea of objective awareness of self means that for the first time in if we look at these signs as just pure archetypes. See, all of us are made up of all of it, so none of it is one clean, clear stream. But if we talk about these things as just completely separate fields, Capricorn, for the first time, is we actually can step back and we can see ourselves objectively as part of something greater. See ourselves objectively as how we are fitting as a piece in the whole of humanity, in the whole of the universe, in the whole of the multiverse, whatever that language fits for you there. So this fourth quadrant, I always think it's, for me, all the signs, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces, are visionary, in part because they are looking back and over everything, right? By the time we reach that fourth quadrant, we've progressed through the majority of the wheel. And so Capricorn leads us into this area. And Capricorn also, in particular, it initiates us into forming our public image, who we are out there in the world. It's the polarity point to Cancer, which is forming the private sense of self, right? Our who we feel that we are on the inside, our inner emotional, private self is the best way to say it. But with Capricorn, we then initiate the sense of public self, which is why oftentimes we associate the words like career and goals and achievement and respect, all these things that happen for most of us out there in the world, right? But once we have initiated this, here's who I'm going to be out there in the world, at least at this moment in time. Aquarius, being the fixed sign that follows, is about bringing value, meaning, and purpose to that public identity, to that public self. So with Aquarius, there's a lot of emphasis on using our public role, using our position in society, using our connections, using all the wisdom that we've gained up until this point in our lives in ways that makes a difference, right? So we see this in Aquarius oftentimes with the champion, being a champion of a cause, right? Having something to improve, to progress, wanting to show that public self can actually do something. And not that Capricorn wasn't doing something. We know that Capricorn is a very busy, busy, productive sign, no question. But there's this deeper rooted level of needing to really commit to moving things forward, to making things better. In the tarot, the card that we associate with Aquarius is the star. And I love the star. It's such a beautiful card in general because it is about hope and healing. And just like Aquarius, the water bearer, pours the water on the dry earth, on things that have become too crystallized, right? The Capricorn stuff that has become too rigid, too solid, too stuck, too old, that's actually dying. And we need to revive it, right? That water revives it. So, and all these things are true. The star represents the hope in each of us, the vision in each of us for a better future, but not just a better future in the sense of like just looking off into the distance and saying, oh, one day, something might be better, or sitting back and, I don't know, pondering some amazing invention, but not doing anything about it. This is the type of vision for the future that we make reality now. And of course, Capricorn can draw back into the past, and there's a lot of value in honoring the past and following the old traditions and ways. Lots of that stuff works. We don't want to just blow it all apart. But at the same time, there are things that grow old that they just don't fit anymore, and we need to move on to something new. But if we think about, in this sense, Capricorn having, one foot in the past, kind of holding the anchor there of what has worked, what we've built so hard to make that we now are don't want to let go of, right? Because it works and it keeps us safe, or it's secure, or it keeps on bringing us money, whatever the thing is. So there's that anchoring to the past. And then we have Aquarius pulling us to the future. But they're really, and I'm going to pull in a Pisces thing here now, even though we're not there yet. There really is no past and future. There is just the present. You know, we say this oftentimes, that the past and the future converge in the present. So to me, Aquarius is about harnessing that future version of ourselves, of our lives, of our planet, of whatever thing, and making that future version now. It's super powerful, you know? But it's not just wishful thinking, I guess is what I'm saying. It's an air sign. And yes, it's thinking, and it's using social connections and intellectual faculty, consciousness, intelligence on all levels, but not just to stay out in the ethers, to actually make something happen. That's the cool thing about fixed signs, right? They're all about using the energy, doing something with the energy. But the other thing I wanted to say about the star card that I find so beautiful, one of the decks I use is the Deva deck. And the image of the star card is, there's I think it's a woman, but that part doesn't matter. It's a being in the center of the card, on Earth. And there's all the planets in the solar system all around. And there's these little sort of like sparkly thread-like connections from the person to all the planets. And what that stands for is the ability to draw from the cosmos when we need it, and to send energy back up to the cosmos. It's the exchange of cosmic energy that's always available to us. See, Aquarius takes us beyond just what we can do humanly. And I'm not saying, so I'm not trying to like limit Capricorn in this way, but Capricorn does tend to focus on human efforts, you know, which is great because there's a lot that we humans can do. Aquarius opens that field a bit more to draw in from some other sources, less earthly sources, right? With Capricorn, we already have this great amass of manifestation power and skills and tools and accomplishments in the earth realm. But Aquarius then takes those things and can draw from other dimensions, and in particular, higher mental dimensions, spiritual as well. But I mean, there's different ways to access and use the mind, and different ways to communicate with intelligence. Intelligence is all over the place. So, you know, this may feel a little bit too out there for some of you, but I mean, this can be communicating with extraterrestrials for sure. It also is just embracing the holographic versions of yourself, right? Or, you know, the parts of you that are in different dimensions, different times, right? It's taking the thing that we call the past and we call the future, and letting all those versions be present to work with now, so that we can choose the best version of ourselves now, which to me is so much what Aquarius is able to do. It's able to see more. And it's open to the unusual, right? So there's so much about us and about our consciousness that we don't know. And I'm saying this is, I feel like at this point in time, this point in the zodiac, in the wheel, when we get to this objective awareness of self, we are able to move enough away from what we've thought we are, what we think life is, how we think things work. And we're actually able to watch ourselves as part of the story, and to get a new perspective. You know, maybe one of the best things about Aquarius, or one of my favorite things about Aquarius, is how they're able to see things through a different lens, in ways that others would never be able to visualize it that way, or be able to put it together that way. There is literally a way of looking at life And sometimes it almost feels to me like on a special energetic frequency, it's like tuning into like um some sort of thing that many of us haven't yet learned to tap into. But yet with Aquarius, that energy just comes naturally. All right. So that's kind of some of those, I guess, entrance into the sign. As always, we'll never be able to cover it all because we don't even know the full contents of the domain of consciousness we call Aquarius. I say this every time I think, but that's the cool thing about astrology. We can't ever know all that's there. There's always more to be discovered. So I never, even as I'm speaking about something, I'm never claiming to be any kind of authority on it. I'm just saying that I'm here on an adventure, and the language of astrology speaks to me and through me in a way that helps me make sense of things, better than anything else I've tried so far. Yeah. So Aquarius, and this is where it's important to remember. So the ruling planet traditionally of Aquarius is Saturn. The modern ruler of Aquarius is Uranus. And I work with both, meaning for me, Aquarius has co-rulers. And so every time I'm looking at something Aquarius, I'm looking at both Saturn and I'm looking at Uranus. The reason I'm bringing this up in particular is that us modern astrologers in particular, we have a tendency to kind of equate Aquarius with Uranus. And there are certainly similarities, right? No question. But the big difference is that Aquarius is not operating on its own. It's part of a zodiac of 12 signs. It's coming from Capricorn. So it's still highly influenced by that energy that is Capricorn. Because in reality, the 12 signs aren't on their own, they're one big wheel. So Aquarius, for example, is not going to be as free thinking, free minded. Who cares if I belong anywhere? I just need to do my own thing. It's going to be less that way than pure Uranus, because planets for me are like free agents. They're not tethered. I mean, they're in a solar system together, right? But they're in their own orbit. So this is why I say, like, there's a Aquarius does still want to find a place to belong, does want to find people to work with, or some kind of group or purpose or avenue where you can do meaningful work together, that you feel that there's a sense of like-mindedness or some sense of kindredness, kindred spirit in there, is important. And I'm not saying, I mean, I can't say exactly how any of these energies would on their own would say, but Uranus, I feel, is much more of like not needing any attachment, right? Uranus is really about being unfettered, completely being free, completely being authentic, and without censorship, right? Without conditioning. The whole idea of Uranus is deconditioning. But Aquarius, while it has all those elements to it as well, it's also still trying to work within a system. And so oftentimes, people with strong Aquarius in their chart feel on the outside looking in. They sometimes feel that there's nowhere that they really fit in. And even if they do have groups, and group actually is my friend Leslie Francis will mention that groups is really more of a Capricorn thing. I like the word community for Aquarius, but whatever word you want to use here, is that it can be that even when you're part of a community or a group or a network, that on the inside, you don't really feel seen for who you are, or you don't really feel like it's true to who you are. And sometimes you just hang out there anyway, maybe without the courage to really break free and find something different. Because like I said, and every person has a longing to be loved and to belong somewhere. And that doesn't go away just because you're an Aquarius and you're, a big rebel and a freedom seeker on top of it, right? It's just about that level of authenticity, and what you'll be looking for in connection will be different and maybe seem unusual to people. But yeah. Yeah, I've the people closest to me in my life sometimes have felt cut off. People with strong Aquarian energy have felt cut off from other people. Mm, maybe maybe even feeling like other people don't really get them. So why try to even show up as I am if people don't get me? And one of the things that I think is important to remember with Aquarius and with everything in life is that you really attract the things in life that are the best fit when you're being most truly you. So it's like the word tribe has become, we don't like to use it so much these days, but that's a word that historically we've used a lot with Aquarius, right? Finding my tribe, finding my people, finding that special special little network of people that somehow has their brains, wired to some similar frequency. But the thing is that you really don't go out and find your community. Now, this doesn't mean that there may not be times where you need to move or adjust or do something differently, right? And to be part of a community, you got to show up too, right? So one of the Aquarian things is the tendency to like stay a little removed, be a little detached, maybe not really show up with who you are, maybe to be a little more, distant, especially emotionally distant. There can be because there can be more comfortability in having some more breathing room, but sometimes you create too much breathing room, and then there's not, you're not bringing enough heart into it. So there can be this whole spectrum here going on. But my point is that you really, what happens is you attract the community meant for you at that time. You attract that community by sending clear signals of what and who you are. And that does come from authenticity. That comes from having the courage to be you and do you in the way that is most natural to you. And sometimes that looks really different than what we were born into or what our friends are doing, or man, it could even be that, all of a sudden we realize that we're in a job and in a relationship, and then maybe we're doing a bunch of other activities, and we sit back at the end of the day and it doesn't feel like us, right? It's Nunu Michaels, I believe, who a long time ago when I was at something he was speaking at, he talked about how the world doesn't really know what to do with you until you define your own edges. And usually I talk about this when I'm speaking about Cancer. And so this very well may be in the Cancer simple astrology video here, but I'm going to bring it up again here because it fits in a little bit of a different context, but very similar. If you're not kind of authentically defining yourself, then life tends to put you in a bunch of weird circumstances. It's almost like it's hard to know where you fit, right? So you end up in weird jobs, weird relationships. When I say weird, I just mean ones that don't feel resonant, right? You end up in all these different positions and spaces that all of a sudden you're like, this just doesn't really, this is actually maybe even uncomfortable for me. And certainly doesn't feel like that energy where you're like, I'm right where I'm supposed to be. And this is it. This is my spot. The way that we get put in the spot that's the right fit is by self-defining. And so for me, there's kind of two pieces. One, there's the self-defining, but then there's also the self-liberation of throwing off the parts that are not me. Because, for example, if I keep wearing a blue sweater every day, but tell people that I don't like blue sweaters, you can see like that doesn't really make sense to the outside world. And when things don't make sense, people don't quite know what to do with us. It's true with boundaries too. And boundaries is something more we talk about with Capricorn, but in general, if you are very secure in knowing what your boundaries are on the inside, very rarely will you have to set a boundary outside. It's almost like people can sense it and feel it when you're that solid in where you are with you. So this whole idea of finding my people or finding my community and feeling somehow left out or experiencing trauma of not finding a place to belong and not finding a place where you can make a difference, not finding a place where you can kind of really dig in there and I don't know, watch and help life grow in a new way. It's hard, right? It's hard not to have that, especially if you're super strong Aquarius or have a strong Uranus signatures in your chart, because there is the need not just to break free and liberate from the things that have kept you stuck in the past, but like I said, to create something better for the future. And we can do that on our own to a certain extent, but we're more powerful as human beings working together. So this idea of building alliances, of coming together and really having allies that, and these people don't have to be our best friends, right? We think about the 11th house, which is Aquarius's house, natural house in the wheel. The 11th house, I know traditionally people talk about being friends, but I don't look at it that way, because to me, friends that I have a one-on-one, like true emotional connection with, that's 7th house for me. The 11th house, though, is allies. It's people that when we come together, we help each other go further and do more. But that doesn't mean those people are going to be, my special personal friends. In fact, sometimes, I may not want them to be my friends at all, but in working together, we can do more together. And this becomes more of this whole type of alliance that I'm talking about. Those alliances are easier to work with and take advantage of, and to spot them and to actually offer yourself to them when you can be more objective. So it's very fitting that, it's in this 4th quadrant, this objective awareness of self, when we actually can be able to start to work with ourselves and with other people without so much personal attachment. This is part of the thing, right? It's not all of a sudden about how much you like me or how much I like you, or, that you make me feel better about myself, or whatever these stories are. It becomes truly, hey, if we team up here, we can actually make this really cool thing happen. Or if we support each other through this, we'll be able to break through this barrier that otherwise wouldn't be able to happen. Yeah. So alliances is a word that I like a lot there. The 11th house too, kind of to tie these archetypes all together. It's the long game. But by the time you're reaching these signs, Capricorn and Aquarius and Pisces, everything in that 4th quadrant, but I feel like even more so because by the time we get to Pisces, it's starting to dissolve, at least in some respects. But with Capricorn and Aquarius, there is a desire to leave a legacy, to do something that can change the world. Doesn't have to be on a huge scale, although we definitely see Aquarians out there. They are like standing up and sitting in, and they are standing up for people's rights, and they are really a champion for the individual, and wanting people to have the freedom to live the way that they want to live, to have the things that they need, to not be oppressed, to not be quieted, to not be made small, but to be given the freedom and the dignity to be and live as they're naturally, authentically meant to be, which is beautiful. Truly is beautiful. And the innovative quality to Aquarius too, the ability to see how things could be better, to come up with plans, for example, like to work with resources in ways that is sustainable, to totally regenerate things, which is normally a word I would use for Scorpio. And I do use that word for Scorpio, but there's also that same energy to me with Aquarius of really knowing how to work with things in new, surprising, super smart ways, right? I mean, Aquarius is known for its intelligence on many fronts. And I want to address too, just before I wind down, that we talk a lot about Aquarius being unemotional, or sometimes being cold, or a Spock-like character. It feels like you're just, talking to someone's brain and not feeling the heart. And everybody has emotion, right? So that's not missing from anyone. But the way that we work with it and look at it is different. And someone was asking me recently about, the signs that are most committed. And I mean, we could go through our different ideas on what that looks like. To me, Aquarius is one of those signs that likes and needs a lot of freedom. But when they choose to commit to something, just like when we see them committing to a cause or to somebody that needs something, or to helping the community, or saving the whales, or whatever it is, it's the same with the relationship, right? When they choose that that's what they're going to commit to, that fixed energy is intense, right? It's hard to get it to budge. And in some ways, the commitment is worth even more when you know that someone has stepped back and really looked at it, that it's not just an emotional rushing in to meet old childlike needs. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen with Aquarians. It happens with everyone. I'm just saying the chances of being able to see things more clearly, to have more clarity of thought, to be able to even see how you yourself are responding in a situation, to see what you really want, what you really need. Because for someone who needs a lot of space and freedom and emotional breathing room, to choose to really commit to something is very intentional. And that's maybe one thing that I feel about Aquarius, that when they choose something, there's a lot of intention behind it. And that's something really to respect. The other thing in evolutionary astrology is we oftentimes talk about the planet Uranus and its associated archetypes, the 11th house and the sign Aquarius, as being associated with trauma. And I do look at that, and I do consider that, but that's not the only way I look at those energies. And I don't automatically assume just because somebody has a super strong signature of those archetypes that all of a sudden their life is just completely full of trauma compared to someone else. I mean, we all have Uranus somewhere in our birth chart. We've all dealt with past life and current life trauma. And I just try to be really careful not to aim straight to a sort of signature that automatically talks about all the trauma and drama in people's lives. It's not that I don't pay attention to it. It's just that sometimes we can be overly heavy on that. So, and it was Dr. Laura Tad, when I was doing one of our shows on Talk Cosmos, Planet Buzz, we were talking about this energy a little bit, and she was mentioning that the trauma, at least the way she kind of come to settle with it, that the trauma that we see showing up, that's revealed by Uranus and by these archetypes, is really the trauma that results from our inauthenticity, meaning the ways that we weren't really true to ourselves. And I'm not saying that that's always been our choice. You know, there are circumstances where certainly we're not physically free, like where we're literally held as a prisoner in some way, or yeah, I mean, any way that you want to look at that there, but at some level deep inside all of us It's our choice to be free, because ultimately freedom is a thing in the mind. And so I like this idea of thinking that if we're bringing in trauma signatures and if we're working with trauma signatures, we want to really look at where have we not been authentic? Where have we been unable to be authentic for whatever reason? And how can we now undo those binds so that we have more room to move, right? That's the healing way of looking at it. And so wherever Uranus is in the chart, for example, is really where you need to like make the rules for yourself. It's where you need to make your own path and do it your own way, and probably test a bunch of different ways to get there. But you need to do what's true to you. And when you do what's true to you, again, my point is that you then attract the people and the things in life that are a good match for that natural energy. Let's see, what else about Aquarius? Knowing probably left a million things out. Oh, well, I didn't mention this. So, free thinking, open-minded, yeah, until they're set on something. And then Aquarius is rigid thinking. Yeah. I mean, think about this fixed air, right? And we can see this all like with activism, all kinds of rebellions, all kinds of rebelling against authority, all kinds of uh, acting out against the system, pushing back. But that there's a certain amount of tension that has to be released, because in the previous archetype with Capricorn, or think about this, or with the reaction of Uranus against Saturn, same type of comparison here. So much energy gets stuck, suppressed, and repressed, and conformed, shoved into a certain shape. Oftentimes it takes a period of blowing things up a little bit. And I'm not encouraging doing destructive things. I'm just saying that when things get really tight and stuck, it's not a surprise when they blow up a little bit. And so that's part of what's happening with anyone who has those strong Aquarian, Uranian energies going on. There's a need to self-liberate, and you only know where you need to do that when you start feeling tight and constricted enough. And so sometimes all that pressure builds and there's a blow up. Yeah, totally. There's a blow up. At the same time, that same liberating free energy, it can really, it's like lightning, right? Lightning strikes and it actually does things, adds different chemicals in the atmosphere, right? I was overhearing something on a podcast or something about what, what lightning actually can bring or create that way. And so thinking about Aquarius energy too, like lightning or like electricity. There's a link here also with the nervous system. Again, there's an ability, I'm kind of coming back to the beginning, to run on a different frequency, to run on a different current, to tap into different energy sources. So this is what's interesting, that while Aquarians are actually really good at figuring out how to work with like natural resources here, like on our planet, to do that better for us, I feel like that's just one level of how they're able to tap into these different energy frequencies and sources. And there's more available than just, of course, the natural resources on the planet. Like I said, there's the resources of all the cosmos. So, yeah. Well, that's all I can think of for right now. And again, thank you for tuning in here and hanging out with me for Simple Astrology. I will be back on soon for Pisces, and then see where the journey goes after that. Well, thanks for joining me in whatever time and space it is. And as always, I wish you well. Many blessings.